Hi, Mr. Siddharth. It's Horan from Kubi. And yeah, we welcome you all for the webinar. Mr. Siddharth, we can start the webinar by 11.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so I think we still have 5 or 7 minutes, right?
Sorry?
I think we still have 5 minutes, I guess.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, we still have 5 minutes. Yeah. Hi, Mr. Siddharth. Shall we start?
Yeah, sure. Let's start. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Siddharth, and today we will be discussing about applying AI to energy and utilities industry. So I'm gonna go over one of the products that I built in the company that I co-founded called Clever Mesh, and we will see how we use AI and machine learning over there. So okay, so briefly about me, I co-founded Clever Mesh in 2018 with one of my friends. We are both electrical engineer. I have a master's degree in electrical engineering from University of Denver. Our company, Clever Mesh, mostly focuses on solutions like smart cabling solutions, then IIoT, which stands for Industrial IoT, and industrial automation like PLC, SCADA, and all those kind of things. So that's about me. If you want to find out more about Clever Mesh, you can check out our website, which is clevermesh.in, or you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Uh, Okay, so this presentation is quite different because we will have a top-down approach here. I didn't want to I did not want to introduce the basics, then go ahead like a typical flow. Instead, I will show you what our product looks like, what our product does. Then we will dive into how our product do that, right? So let's go ahead. Okay, so this is what it looks like, right? On the mobile phone, it looks something like this. So you can see there are a couple of graphs and nice looking meters and stuff like that. Some of the features are real-time monitoring. So just bear with me. We will first look at the product, then we will see how it works, right? So so this product performs real-time monitoring, advanced analytics, and it has a very cool dashboard like that. But what it is, right? So another couple of features. So you can see on the dashboard there are nice looking graphs and stuff like that, right? Then it is a custom dashboard. It has a robust network. Since we're talking about IIoT, so it has to have a network, right? Then it generates reports, alerts, alarms, and all those things. Okay, so yeah, so this is what the dashboard looks like. So I want you to take a closer look, right? So you can see the dashboard over here. There's alarm options. Then there are a couple of graphs which shows kilowatt hour. If any one of you is electrical engineer, you know what I'm talking about. So it shows kilowatt hour, kVAH, right? A couple of rupees. Then some PF, which stands for power factor. Then there's a couple of alarms and right. And then there's this map which shows the location of this particular server, right? So this is what the dashboard looks like. So what we are doing here, we are collecting all sorts of data from one of the industries, right? Mostly the data is energy or electrical energy related data. Apart from that, we are collecting industrial data, like so in an industry there are lots of machines and stuff like that. We are collecting all that data, and we are processing that real time, and we are showing all the results on this particular dashboard. So it is a highly, I'm sorry, it is a highly customizable dashboard. You can see lots of parameters here, right? Like a chiller plant. There is a couple of other things, right? So you can see kWh reading, and you can see the historical data and all those things. So I hope by this you understand what actually we are showing here, but we want to understand how it is working, right? So so let's move ahead from this. Yeah, so the dashboard, we call the dashboard Clever Dash. So we couldn't come up with a better name, so we just call it Clever Dash. Okay, so so let's see what we are doing here. So if we look at our very simplified system design, you can see in the center there is a server or database which is located on AWS cloud, right? Then there is something called Clever Edge RTU, right? Then there are a couple of like electricity signs and industries and all those things. And on the right hand side, you can see the Clever Dash dashboard, reports, alerts. So what are we doing here? We have basically created a network of devices with help of AWS cloud, right? And with help of our edge devices, right? These edge devices are collecting data from various sources. We will see what this data is in the later parts. So these edge devices, we call them Clever Edge RTU, remote terminal unit, right? So these units are connected to various machines or electrical energy sources or energy meters and stuff like that. It collects all the parameters from over there. The data is shared in real time with our AWS server. It is stored in our databases, and this data is what we have seen on our Clever Dash dashboard. This data is also used to generate reports and generate alerts. And all this is happening in real time. Right? In almost real time, the data is shared. So now again, so this is a very simplified overview. Now if we multiply this with several times, imagine you have 20 industries, 20 factories located all across India, right? What you can do is you can simply deploy one of this Clever Edge RTU, connect this to your devices, connect this to your AWS server, and you will be able to monitor it from anywhere in the world right on your Clever Dash, right? Or on your dashboard, right? So I hope you understand the whole premise here. This is what a typical industrial IoT solution looks like. This is what a typical industrial IoT functions like, right? So you have connected devices that collect data. The data is shared throughout your network, probably to some distributed server or some centralized server. Then it is used for monitoring or whatever action you want to take, right? So this is what a typical IIoT network looks like. This is the very same thing that we have seen here. A couple of examples that already you're using at your home is, like you connect your earphones with help of Bluetooth to your mobile phone, right? So that is a very simple form of networked IoT device, right? So I hope you get the premise here. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. So why we are doing all this stuff to collect data? I mean, why we are trying to collect data? Why cannot we just monitor everything? Why is data so important? Because data is the root for all the not emerging, but already emerged technologies like AI, machine learning, robotics, IoT, and Industry 4.0, and automation. And so data is the root for all these technologies. It is very important for any engineer, any product manager, anyone who's working in this field, or so it is very important for them to understand data first. So data always comes first in any of these kind of products or projects or services. Data comes first, right? So the first part is collecting data, which we have already seen. Now we will see data in more detail. So this is how we collect data, right? So if we have some new plant coming up or some new machine coming up, so first part is you need to identify your data sources, right? So you identify what data sources you have. Okay. For example, if you're working in a plant, in a manufacturing plant, The primary data source would be your energy meters, right? Because you can directly capture uh, uh, your electrical energy related data. For example, how much electricity is being consumed, what is the voltage has been uh, throughout the plant's operation, the current amount of the current utilized by this plant, right? So that is the very first case. Then you can further bifurcate this. You can target specific machines. For example, there is a big boiler, right? So you want to see how the boiler different, you want to monitor different parameters of that boiler very closely, so you can connect that boiler as well. Then you have some chiller plant or something like that. You have your air conditioners, and so many machines. You have machines all around you, and you just almost all the machines these days provide you with capabilities to connect with IoT devices, right? So this is what the first part is. So first thing you do is identify your data sources. So when you're working in utilities industry or energy, like power plants or manufacturing plants or any sort of industries, it is very important to identify the right data sources and collect the right data, right? Once you know what your data sources are, the second step would be to install your sensors and edge devices, right? So this would be your very second step. You need to install. So IoT is all about sensors and edge devices. So what do I mean by edge devices? So any device which is connected at the edge of the network, that is where the data is being collected. That part is what we call the edge of the IoT network, right? So so you need to connect a sensor or some sort of device there. I'm going to show you a couple of stuff like that. So you need to connect one of the sensors or edge device over there in order to collect data or perform some sort of processing. Then you can share that data through like HTTP or something like that, through your network to the central server, right? So this is where the second step comes in. Then third part is you need to build your data pipeline. What is a data pipeline? Imagine you have raw data which is in some numerical format, right? And you cannot make anything out of it. You're collecting temperature, you're collecting energy consumption, you're collecting voltage, current, and all those things, right? But they are all in some sort of numerical format, and you don't know what that means. So you need to perform some sort of processing. You need to process that data to convert it to your understandable form. Then you need to dig that data to get the information that you want, right? You need to change that data into some particular format, or you need to remove the garbage data. You need to remove the null values, or the values that you don't want to read. So so there is all these sort of stuff. And you need to collect your connect your sensors, edge devices to your server, or to some other source or something. So all this is done with help of data pipeline. This is a huge part of what we call data engineering. If you are not familiar with that, this is part of data engineering. Just one second. Okay, so this is all part of data engineering, right? So in this step, we build a data pipeline. The sensors are already connected to your network and to the source. Data is coming in. You need to process the data, store the data in in your database, or whatever you want to do with the data. You will do it with help of this particular data pipeline, right? Then we have data coming in, we have data pipeline. Then the next step is you create your servers, you create all sorts of storage and stuff like that. I'm not going to go deep into the architecture of how servers and storage work. I won't be going into any technical details today. So just so just for an overview, so you will have a couple of servers. For example, in our case, we are primarily working with MongoDB and Redis, if you know what that is, right? So yeah, then the final part is data processing. Now you have all the data, you have data stored in your databases, you have servers for processing data and stuff. So now you clean your data, you pre-process this data, and you present it in form of a nice dashboard, nice graphs or reports, or even mobile phone notification. You can notify on WhatsApp. You can do all sorts of things with this data, and you can uh, perform machine learning, or in a broader term, you can apply AI to this data, right? So once again, this is the very first part of working with any AI application, any machine learning application. The first part is always very critical. It is almost like the 80% of the entire project, right? You need to collect your data, you need to process your data, store your data, you need to create a complete infrastructure, you need to define your network. So this is what we have done. The dashboard is only the front face, and behind the dashboard you will be able to see, you will find all these things, right? So before AI, before machine learning, the most important part is data. You need to know how data is working, you need to know the ins and outs of your data, you need to know each and every parameter, what that defines, right? So yeah, so as I said, we are using Clever Edge. These are some of the properties of our remote terminal unit, right? So remote terminal unit is a very generic term. You can take a lot of devices are called RTUs, so don't be confused with that. So it's basically a very simple device which provides multiple interfaces like a Modbus, Ethernet, GPRS, Wi-Fi, so that we can connect it through the network to our data pipeline or to the server directly, right? So yeah, so we have a data pipeline. We can create data pipeline with help of this device. We can connect up to 6 sources, like we can connect 6 energy meters or something like that. It supports all sorts of data. It supports data from sensors, actuators, machines, meters, drivers, drives, motors, and the list is huge. So you can connect almost any device that supports sharing data to this particular unit. This unit will take your data and share it with our server through the data pipeline, right? Okay, so yeah, so this is what the data looks like. We have been talking about data for quite some time. So this is what it actually looks like. At first look, you'll just think it's useless or it's garbage. But when you go when you go deeper into it, you can see on the left hand side there are a couple of timestamps, right? Then there are parameters. So I have simplified this. The raw data is not actually like this, but this is a CSV format, which is comma separated file, right? And you can see all the parameters. For example, if you have an electrical engineering background, you would know what I'm talking about. So you can see power factor here, then there is some voltage, and there is some neutral voltage and current, and all those things. So it has, for any single machine or any single energy meter, uh, it can share more than 300 parameters, right? More than 300 parameters per edge device. I would say not per edge device, it's actually per sensor, right? So for a single sensor, you should be able to see, you should be able to collect more than 300 different parameters. And in our particular use case, we collect this data at 10 to 30 seconds. So it depends. In some cases, we even collect at 5 minutes per cycle, right? So every 5 minutes or every 10 seconds, whatever the case is, the data will be collected by our Clever Edge device and the RTU. So the data will be collected every 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. We can change it programmatically. So whatever the setting is, it will collect data in that 10 seconds and share that data to your central server. So imagine you have 20 different locations. You have hundreds of this Clever Edge RTUs deployed, and they are sharing data in real time every 10 seconds or 15 seconds. How much data, so they are sharing at least 300, in some cases thousands of parameters every 10 second, 15 second or 30 second or 1 minute or 5 minutes, right? So imagine how much data you get. So in a couple of hours, not per day, I would say in a couple of hours we get several gigabytes of data. And this poses a new problem: how to process this much amount of data and how to store it, because storage, although storage cost is not very high these days, but still, if you're getting several gigabytes every couple of hours, and I would say even more than that, so it's a huge problem, right? So what we do is we discard a lot of data. For example, uh, out of these 10 readings, I would just average them out, collect any one sample, and I would store that particular reading in our database, right? And I would discard the rest of the reading. So this is just one of the examples how we process data, right? So this is the amount of data that we can collect in real time through these devices. So this is all about the infrastructure. Yeah, so this is a list of some of the parameters, right? So again, if you are from electrical engineering, this would all make sense to you. So we have R phase power factor building 1, R phase power factor office 1, right? So you can see R phase, so there is power vectors for every phase, every building. There is R to Y phase voltage, then neutral voltage and line to line voltage, right? Forward apparent energy, forward active energy, then there is reactive energy and power factor, and so many parameters that you can collect. And imagine what you can do with all this information. You have basically information from every nook and corner of your energy infrastructure, right? So of your power plant or sorry, manufacturing plant, or so you have information about everything. What you can literally dig into this data, and you can identify exactly what is going on with your power plant, sorry, manufacturing plant, right? But this is not what we are here for. We are here for artificial intelligence, or in narrower term, I would say machine learning, right? We are here to discuss AI, right? So where is this AI that I mentioned earlier? So we have all the data, and imagine we can use that data to identify all the problems that had occurred before, right? But not just that, we can use that data to predict problems that might occur later, or predict stuff like cost or power performance, or whatever you want to predict. You can utilize that data to make predictions as well. But how do you do that? You do that with help of AI, or I would say machine learning. AI is a very broad term, right? It stands for artificial intelligence. Of course, you might be knowing that. And machine learning is a very specific term which makes use of statistical algorithms and stuff like that to make predictions, right? So again, let's go back to our dashboard and take a look at all the marked stuff here. Okay, so what do you see? We have a couple of readings on top. It says 3484 kWh, 3450 kVAh, right? Then there are a couple of notifications on the left hand side. There is this readings 21600 rupees, right? There is this average power factor, and then there is this alarm, right? So this is what we have done with help of machine learning. all these stuff are what we call predictions, and these predictions are happening in near real time, right? So we have all the readings coming in. What readings? These readings. We have this data coming in, right? We have all the voltage and current and power factor and this apparent energy, active energy, right? And we are making use of machine learning algorithms to predict these values. These are future values, right? This is 21600 is the expected cost for the operation of your plant for this month, right? It is not previous cost. This is the amount of energy that will be utilized. So these are, don't go with the accuracy of these numbers. These are just representational numbers, right? So yeah, so this is one, cost prediction. Now what about this part? So again, we can use the same data. What data? This data. We can use the same data to identify patterns from your historical errors or historical performance related stuff, right? And we can generate notifications here. So this is simple notification if the machine is on or not, or a sensor is active. But you can see there is some error notification here. There is some warning over here with your temperature sensor. How is that predicted? That is predicted with help of machine learning algorithms. So your machine learning model identifies your identifies your if there is something wrong with your data, and it is giving you a warning that this temperature sensor might dysfunction, or there is something wrong with the readings of the temperature sensor, or it might do some it might have some fault in the near future, right? So this is what we are doing here. Again, the alarms part. So it can identify, for example, in case of power factor, it can identify from historical data. So we train our models with help of previously collected data, and it can identify how to improve power factor, right? So it identifies in which conditions power factor's performance was best, and it can make suggestions to the owner or whoever is operating this thing, that if you do these stuff, your power factor will be maximum. If you're not from electrical engineering background, you might not understand what I'm saying, but power factor is a very important parameter which needs to be close to 1, right? So our model will identify this reading, which is 0.91, which is very much below 1, and which significantly affects your operating cost. And if you have it like around 0.99 or 0.98, usually industries prefer to keep it near 1. So this is what machine learning is doing here, right? Okay, so again, so whatever we discussed, so what we are using ML for, first is simple predictive analytics. You can just Google the search predictive analytics and you'll find thousands of examples, right? So simple predictive analytics is one thing. Then cost forecasting, which I already discussed. So you can use your data, your real-time data. You can train machine learning models, and based on those models, you can predict your future cost. You can predict if, how much the cost should be if you if you operate under the same conditions, how much your cost should be within the next 6 months. So you can, so these things really help industries to optimize their operating processes so that they can minimize their cost, right? So predictive analytics, cost estimation, then process optimization. So you can use this data to identify bottlenecks, to identify, if you have two machines that should be working in sync, but instead two different guys are operating those machines, and so you're not able to utilize the full potential of those machines. then in that case, you can easily identify, if you take a look at a graph, what is happening with those machines, you will quickly identify that two different guys are using the machine at two different times. So your performance is degraded or your productivity is affected. So this is what process optimization, just a simple example of process optimization. And then alarm predictions. So instead of generating alarms when fault occurs, you would prefer to have alarms before that fault occurs, right? So this is what everyone would prefer, right? So alarms prediction. So you can make use of that data, and you can make use of your historical events like previous alarms, right? And you can train your machine learning models to identify those alarms before they occur. Again, this will improve productivity significantly. Instead of having a huge shutdown because of some fault, you can identify the fault beforehand and try to eradicate the problem before it occurs. And again, the same thing, improve efficiency. Of course, you can use this data not just with machine learning, even your data itself is highly useful to improve your efficiency. So these are some of the use cases uh, for our own machine learning algorithms. So let's take a look at these machine learning things that we talk about, right? So how do you do that? How do you show, how do you, if you take a look at the top bar, how do you see those readings? These readings are coming from a machine learning model. How do you get a machine learning model? You don't get it from anywhere. You create a machine learning model with help of your data, right? Uh, with help of your data, you create your model, you train your model to identify patterns, anomalies, to so whatever your problem is, whatever you want to do with your data. So you train your machine learning model according to that, and you deploy your model in production. So when you deploy your model, you will, in the back end, you will get these readings, and with help of your front end, your web application, you can display it like this. So how does that happen? You have a machine learning model which is trained based on this data, right? This is your historical data. For example, you have data from the past 5 years of your power plant, of your manufacturing plant, or your industry, or power plant, or energy generation plant, or whatever it is. You use the past 5 years data or something like that to create a machine learning model, right? And once you are satisfied with your machine learning model's performance, you will take your real-time data. So we are getting real data in real time with help of our clever edge devices and all the infrastructure that we discussed in the earlier sections, right? So you get all those data, you feed that data in your ML model, which is already trained, right? Then it makes prediction, and it shows you the accuracy, the expected accuracy or something like that for your prediction. So you're getting cost estimation based on your historical data. So in very simple terms, this is something that we humans do all the time, right? If we go to a place uh, 10 times, we get familiar with that place, and we already assume what we should expect. Or if you're so just one of the examples. So this is how ML, machine learning models work in a very simplified way, right? So what kind of machine learning models we use in our application? Sorry. So what kind of machine learning models we use in our application? Well, the very first problem is what is generally known as time series analysis or time series forecasting, right? So for example, for our cost forecasting is a time series problem. If you go back to your data, here, you can see on the left hand side there is timestamp which says February 4, 2019 and all these things, right? So it is very important to identify the timestamp for these particular readings so you can relate to that, right? For example, in winter your plant might be running more than usual, or in summer you are running your ACs at full capacity, right? So this is where time series analysis comes in. So in this particular example, you can see there are readings from 1900 to 2000, right? So for the last 100 years, you can see the readings, right? So this is what we identify as time series, where the data is distributed according to uh, some time range, right? According to some time range, I would say. For example, it can be yearly data. Like in this case, it is yearly data, and in our case, l- like this one, the data is collected almost every 30 seconds, right? It is collected at 2608, then 2638. So data is collected at every 30 seconds. So the time difference is 30 seconds. In this case, it is 1 year. So just an example. So we can use time series analysis for cost forecasting. We have plants data or manufacturing plants data or any industries data for the last say 5 years or 10 years or even 1 year, and we can utilize that with help of time series models or analysis to identify or estimate the cost for next month or next week or next hour or next year or whatever it is, right? So again, yeah, so this is what our data looks like, right? And what kind of, so I'm not going into a lot of technical details here, so my idea is to give you an overview of what we are using in our application, right? So some of the simple solutions that we use, statistical solutions basically, that we use here is called ARIMA, which stands for auto regressive integrated moving average. And its a superior variant, I would say, is SARIMAX, which stands for seasonal auto regressive integrated moving average with exogenous factor. I know that's a mouthful, so I would just suggest, if you're really interested in understanding time series analysis, which is a very in demand field right now, so you can simply search ARIMA and SARIMAX model. There are a lot of variants for ARIMA. This is the basic foundational algorithm for time series analysis. And then there is GARCH and a lot of other stuff. So you can simply Google search what ARIMA is and what SARIMAX is. So I'm not going into technical details because this is a whole other dimension, right? So okay, so this is uh, one of the ways we handle our time series analysis problem. Another way of how we do it is what we call XGBoost. It is one of the most popular machine learning algorithms right now. And if you're trying to break into data science, machine learning, then I would suggest you should you should master XGBoost in any case. So yeah, so XGBoost stands for extreme gradient boosting. It is a gradient boosting decision tree kind of algorithm. It is very popular because of its performance. It is very high performing, and it is highly accurate. So if you are familiar with Kaggle, a lot of Kaggle computations are won with help of XGBoost. Okay, so these are a couple of algorithms. Apart from that, we also work with deep learning. Deep learning is a really advanced stuff. So personally, I prefer XGBoost, but if we have a huge amount of data where XGBoost, although XGBoost works well with huge data as well, but in a lot of cases, deep learning performs much better. So in a couple of cases, we use deep learning, some variants of deep learning neural networks are called dense neural networks, CNNs, which stands for convolutional neural networks, which are specifically primarily mostly used for image processing or image classification kind of task. Then RNN and LSTM, this is recurrent neural network and long short-term memory cells. So these two are mostly used for NLP, text identification, and so all the text and speech related applications, we use RNN, LSTM, and even for time series analysis, RNN and LSTM perform really well. So these are some of the technologies, some of the algorithms that we use for our machine learning problems, right? So what we discussed so far is cost estimation. Apart from that, so I have already given you an overview of the kind of problems that we solve with machine learning. So here is another example, which is power factor correction. So cost estimation is a time series kind of problem, but power factor correction is a completely different problem. You're just trying to identify the different patterns on how the power factor can be improved, right? You are basically trying to identify why your power factor is performing poorly and what parameters need to be improved in order to improve your power factor. So if I assume most of you are not from electrical engineering background, so power factor is a very important parameter, especially for manufacturing plants, which have, because they have huge machines running, and a poor power factor can severely affect their cost, their operating cost, their energy bill. So this is a really, so a lot of our clients, customers ask for power factor correction stuff. So machine learning models are very useful because we can feed our active reactive power parameters, voltages, currents, data, and it can literally go into depth and identify the exact source of problem. And you can then use all your physical devices, like whatever measures you need to take in the plant in order to correct your power factor. So again, I just wanted to introduce this problem because this is very different than your time series analysis problem. This is what we call I'm sorry, this is what we call a classification problem, right? So it takes data and it identifies which of the parameters is performing poorly, or we can also treat it as a regression problem, right? But in our case, we prefer to use it as a classification problem. Okay, so yeah, so this is all about what kind of problems we are solving. But how do we do that? How does a machine learning model work? So I'm not going to dive deep into the technicalities of machine learning. So this is so whatever we are discussing today is mostly related to supervised machine learning. So in very simple term, in supervised machine learning, you have some labeled data, right? Labeled data as in you have the data. For example, in this case, you have cats and dogs data. So you have some images and you can identify which image is a cat and which image is a dog, right? So this is what the problem is in this particular picture. So the problem is you want to identify if the image is of that of a cat or the image is that of a dog, right? So it is very easy for humans to do, but not so much easy for computers. So in order to do that, what you will use is what we call labeled data. So you will use images of cats and dogs along with their labels, right? So you will label these images as cats, the images of cats, and you will label images of dogs as dogs, right? And you can use this labeled data to feed it into a blank machine learning model. So you will create a machine learning model. So what is a machine learning model? Machine learning model is basically some statistical algorithm, nothing more than that, right? The algorithm can be very simple, or it can be a complex algorithm like a deep learning model, right? Or a very simple one like a linear regression model. So it is basically just uh, uh, a statistical model, right? And you feed your data, it learns with help of data and label. So it will identify, learn the patterns in images of cats and dogs. Then you can use this model for prediction, like what we have been doing so far. So primarily two sorts of problems can be solved with help of regression and classification, right? With help of machine learning models. One is regression and other is classification, right? So what is regression and classification? Is basically you're just identifying between among different classes, right? So in this case, you are identifying if the image belongs to cat or dog. So we have two classes, cats and dogs. In case of regression, we are calculating the exact value. For example, if you want to estimate the price of real estate of some houses, right? So you will have real estate data and it will predict some price point, right? So that is what we call regression problem. For example, in our case, it is cost estimation, which is a regression problem. But this one, power factor correction, it is a classification problem, right? So again, so this is what a deep learning network looks like. It is very popular these days because of the kind of applications deep neural network has. So it can be used, deep neural networks are used for computer vision, NLP kind of problems. It is used in robotics, and your Siri in your iPhone, which is, I believe it of course works on some sort of NLP, deep neural network. So yeah, so again, I'm going into technical details. So this is what a very simplified image of deep neural networks looks like. You have all these nodes where some calculation is performed, then the value is shared in the next node, and in the output layer, you identify some class, or you identify some value or something like that. So this is how deep neural networks look like. And if you're really interested, I would suggest you take your time. There are plethora of videos or resources available online. So yeah, so okay, so this is what any typical machine learning pipeline looks like. So, there are so much information about data science, machine learning, and all these things available online, but none of them exactly, or very few of them exactly talk about the machine learning pipeline, right? So it's not as simple as just getting data, training your model, right? So you have to package that model. You have to validate your model, test your model, deploy model in production. Then there is the monitoring part. So all these things are combined. So yeah, there are some stuff like ML ops. If you know what ops is, there is something called ML ops, which is machine learning operations, which takes care of deployment part, monitoring part, and validation part, and all those things. Then we have all sorts of frameworks and libraries. So these are some of the tools, frameworks, libraries, modules, whatever you want to call it. So I just use a generalized term called tools. So these are some of the tools that we prefer to work with in our applications. So yeah, so the language of choice is Python. We also work with a couple of other languages like JavaScript and React, and because of course we are working with application front end and HTML and CSS and all those things. So, but primarily for our machine learning algorithms, machine learning part, we use Python. For our models, for deep learning models, our first choice is always Keras and TensorFlow. Apart from that, in some cases we use PyTorch, and for some simpler applications we use scikit-learn. And also for time series analysis, there is a very good library called stats model, which is very helpful. And we also use Spark, right? So Spark's MLlib is very helpful, because if you have huge amount of data, you want to perform distributed training, which is where Spark comes in. And so yeah, so Spark, a couple of other libraries, and we use Plotly, Pandas, Matplotlib, NumPy, and Dask, a lot of stuff for processing the data, for evaluating our data. Apart from that, we also work with Amazon Web Services, and we work with Amazon SageMaker, which is a very, very helpful tool, because it's really very easy to deploy your infrastructure. So when you have huge amounts of data, you want to train everything on GPU, right? If you train on CPU, it will take a huge amount of time and efforts. So SageMaker, Amazon SageMaker really simplifies that. You can just write a few lines of code and deploy your own GPU, and deploy your Docker container and train everything from right there. You don't have to worry about the part. Similarly, MLflow is another uh, tool to manage your machine learning workflow from end to end, right? So these are some of the tools for our applications front end. We prefer to work with Flask, and in some cases Django, Fast API, even Streamlit, right? And we mostly use a lot of serverless stuff from Amazon Web Services, like Amazon Lambda, DynamoDB, Kinesis, Stream, and all those things. And our databases of choice are MongoDB and Redis. Why MongoDB? Because personally, I am very comfortable using MongoDB, because we have time series data, and so it is very easy to manage time series data in MongoDB compared to any relational database like Postgres, or any of those kind of stuff. And then we have Redis. So Redis is very useful in our data. So when you have real-time data coming in, you can store that data, process that data in memory with help of Redis. So these are some of the tools. We use a lot of other stuff as well, but these are most of the tools that we work with. Then again, if we go back to our system design, this is what we discussed earlier. And now all this should make a lot of sense. Now you should be familiar with how these devices are collecting, what kind of data is being collected, and how these devices are collecting that data, and how it is shared with servers, and what kind of machine learning algorithms are working in this clever dashboards, and all those things. So I hope all of this makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, so that's all from my side. So I hope you have enjoyed whatever I discussed so far. So I guess I'll take questions for now. Just 1 second. Okay, so I see a couple of questions in the chat box. Sir, do you face any problem in accuracy of prediction due to failure of hardware devices, because it affect the continuity of data, and how you solve it if this happens? So yeah, so there is a lot of problems, a lot of issues when you're working in field, when your devices are deployed in remote areas, like really some remote manufacturing plants. So it is not as simple as whatever I have mentioned so far, right? So you have to really manage your device failures is a very common problem, so you need to have replacement devices all the times, and so you need to make sure that your system can your infrastructure can handle device failure. So for example, your server should be able to identify which device has failed, and it should know in advance that this device will not be streaming data because there has been some issue. So so these are very common problems. So okay, so I hope I answered your question. So so I have another question from Mr. Jay Prasad. Okay, I am confused on using AI in energy sector, when to use AI and when not to use them. Example of cost estimation, power factor calculation. These factors have a direct mathematical formula. Why not use direct equation but build an ML? So this is the first part. Why not use direct mathematical equation, but why do we want to use an ML model? Okay, so see the mathematical formula. You can use mathematical formula to calculate your values for now. But what we are doing here is we are making predictions, right? So for cost estimation, I want to estimate what my power plants manufacturing plants cost will be for the next 3 months. You don't have data for the next 3 months, right? You don't have any information for the next 3 months. All you have is the historical data. You have data from yesterday, you have data from last 1 week, you have data from last month, you have data from last year, and you have data from last 5 years or 10 years or 100 years or whatever it is. So you can use that data, and with help of machine learning algorithms, you can identify what your estimated cost will look like for the next 3 months or next 6 months or next hour, maybe, or whatever you want to predict. You can do that, right? So again, for power factor calculation, what we are doing is not exactly power factor calculation. We don't need to calculate power factor. We are getting direct values of power factor from our energy sources, from our energy meters. So we don't need to calculate power factor. What we are trying to identify is the problems that are causing our power factor to go down, right? The power factor should be close to 1, right? Power factor needs to be close to 1, but in our cases, power factor is close to say power factor is close to say 0.9, 0.91, 0.95, uh, right? So we need to improve that. So we need to identify patterns in our data. For example, your voltage is low, or your electric power is high, or apparent power is different, or whatever is causing the problem with power factor. We need to identify that. Which is why we are using machine learning again for alarms. You don't want to predict alarms after that happen, right? You want to predict like 2 hours or maybe 2 days or 2 months before that problem happens, right? Okay, so I hope I answered part of your question. So the second part is, I understand that at the end, after model is trained, I arrive at some behaving equation as that of an empirical formula. But is it even correct to build an ML model? Yes, it is more than correct. ML models are being used for predictions in so many applications, and it is just going to increase. So yes, it is very correct to use ML models. We are not just calculating, we are predicting. There is a huge difference between calculating and predicting, right? So the third question, how to choose approach to train the object detection model using own dataset. Also found difficult to access Raspberry Pi V2 camera. Okay, so I'm sorry, I cannot help you with your Raspberry Pi problems. I'm really sorry about that. But if you want to train object detection model, I think very popular solutions are YOLO V3, then faster RCNN, and there is single shot detector. So these are all objectives. So in our cases, in some experiments that we did, we mostly work with TensorFlow object detection library, which is very helpful. And there are a lot of solutions available on GitHub. If you are a programmer, you should be familiar with that. So you can try that. Right. Okay. So that's all the questions I have. So I hope you guys really enjoyed, and I hope you guys got all the information that you're hoping for. So very good luck to all of you, and thank you for attending this webinar.
Hi all, this is Harun from Gubi. Thank you, Mr. Siddharth, for this wonderful webinar and taking part with Gubi for this AA for All initiative. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. And thank you all the participants for this coming to this webinar. We have much more webinars to come up with this AA for All. And also, please give your feedback for the webinar through the links I have sent into group chat. So thank you, Mr. Siddharth. It is really helpful for us.
Thank you. Thank you.
The recorded session of this webinar will be shared over email, and it will also be available on Gubi's YouTube channel. You can check it whenever you want. Thank you all.